Welcome to Inside Pleasantville School District. I'm Emily Rubin Persons, your host and Board of Ed trustee. It is early June. The end of the year is finally here. In the last 12 months, I've had the opportunity to bring you conversations with students, with the principals, district administrators, teachers, our PTA, parent leaders. And to finish the year, I wanted to bring you three people who are at the heartbeat of our three schools. Our assistant principals. We have Greg Fondy in the high school, Adam Shigaris in the middle school, and Rachel Hunger in the Bedford Road School. In Pleasantville, our principals and our assistant principals have such a strong partnership. Their roles seem to weave in and around each other. So Adam Shigaris is here with me today to start off the conversation to let us know, what does the assistant principal really do?
It's a fun job, one that we really enjoy. And, there's a lot of many things that we do. Every day is very different.
Every day is very different.
It's so different.
I can't even imagine, because you never know when you walk in the door.
Oh, yeah. And you always have a plan of what you want to accomplish that day.
Right.
And many days that plan stays where it is. And that's for after hours, where we get to tackle what we need to. Right. And, that makes the job fun. It makes it very spontaneous.
So of the things that you do, are there, let's say, three kind of categories that you would say definitely fall under your umbrella?
Sure. So if I had to pick three that I would classify as the top aspects. One is the operations of the building, how the building runs, how it functions. We have state testing. We have a lot of just standard operations to make sure that the day moves flowing and we're prepared.
Right, but that's in scheduling. That would be,
of course, master scheduling is a big part of that. A lot of that work happens in the summer and the second half of the year.
Just making sure all the bodies are in the place. When you think of all those people walking in and around the hallways.
100%. Shared
sure
staff.
They're all there.
Definitely. Shared staff. Utilization, safety, making sure that everywhere is covered, lunch duties, all of that, how we have it manned, where they are in different places. There's a lot of thought process that goes into them and just time and work to do that. And thankfully, we have some amazing staff that help us do a great job with it. So the building operations takes up a big chunk of it. Being a student liaison, that above all else, is the heart and soul of what we do. We're here for students. It's why we've gotten into education and made this our profession. Which that's the fun part of the job about being a building level leader.
They're such wiggly little people.
Oh yeah. And middle school is a fun age. Middle school is an absolute fun age. They come in 5th grade and they're bright-eyed. Oh yeah. And they're excited. In typical years, they get lockers. That's their first real estate. I mean, I've seen lockers that were decked out nicer than any house or apartment that I ever had before.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's so much fun. And then, by the time they leave out of 8th grade and coming into the high school, they're mature young adults and they're excited to take on the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. And the last part is an instructional coach. And that's such an important job for any building level leader, especially an assistant principal. When we're in the classrooms, we're working on pedagogy, we're working on curriculum, and we're working on instructional strategies for our staff.
Right. So you're and you're observing, and you said you also work with the department heads and dealing with, there's so much that happens in that 8 o'clock, it's really outside of the 8 to 2:30 time frame, because all of that planning is happening, and then all of a sudden you've got a kid who maybe needs something and everything stops.
Definitely. So, and that was one part that I alluded to earlier, is we always have a plan coming into the day. All of those meetings, whether it's with department chairs, whether it's with grade level leaders, or just departments within our own building, those meetings are set outside of the school day for students, which allows us to be present for when students are in the building.
Right. Of all the things that you do, what's your most fun thing that you do?
The best time is hanging out with the students. Just be able to engage with them and interact with them and watching them grow, helping them learn. Every student, every person, we all make mistakes, right? And helping them learn from them, understand them, and see the growth that they've made. They go through some tremendous growth in middle school. And to see the individuals that they become by the time they leave for us going to high school, that's the most rewarding.
Right. And this year, with things being so different, you had kids in different places within the school, like you were talking about lunch being outside, which, is a big deal. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I remember you had some tables outside, but that was only for a small group of kids, and now with this you had more kids.
So part of our PAWS acronym, part of our PBIS, we want to positively incentivize our students.
Right.
So one of the aspects that they were able to choose is to sit out in the courtyard for lunch. We have the beautiful koi pond that's there.
Okay.
The inside, that little
space.
Inside crevice that is like the hidden gem
it is
of
such
the
a
middle
funny
school.
Little spot.
It's beautiful. Anytime we hire someone, one of the first times when we take them around a tour, we bring them there.
Yeah.
Mr. Mara did that for me when he toured me around, and no one would think that there'd be a koi pond there with beautiful, large koi fish.
I know.
It's unbelievable, and it's very tranquil. So students in 5th grade, 6th grade, a lot of the times, they would choose that as a privilege. But also, referring to some of the tables that you mentioned, we had something for 8th grade. We want to make 8th grade a very fun, a very rewarding year.
Sure.
They're the leaders of the middle school. They set the tone, the expectation, and they lead by example. So when it gets a little bit nicer in traditional years, we would allow them to eat out on the picnic table and enjoy that. This year, as you mentioned, very, very different year. Every grade has had a lot more outside time than ever before. But you know, we really enjoy it. And the students have stepped up. They clean up after themselves. They take advantage. We have beautiful grounds. We're so fortunate.
You have those stairs leading down to the basketball court, and just getting some fresh air and just kind of getting out of the building for 20 minutes is very rejuvenating.
Definitely,
So
they get sun, vitamin D, fresh air. And with COVID being a real important aspect of it, it's helped with students feeling comfortable back in the building. That's the time where they're going to take their masks off and they have to eat. And we were very sensitive to that need from the beginning. And it's been an option that they've had all year.
Do you think you'll keep that flexibility for next year?
Definitely. That's something that Mr. Mara and I have talked with our team and talked with our student leaders about, them really advocating and liking that. And that's something I could see we keep moving forward.
Particularly for a nice day, you know, it just, it really is great. So let's see, you've been here 4 years already.
4 years.
When was the year, like, where were you in your life when you said, I want to go into education?
Sure. So I knew this from a very young age. I always enjoyed school. I was that student that I'd wake up, couldn't wait to go to school, never missed a day, enjoyed every aspect from music to sports to all of it. And when I was allowed to be a camp counselor in my town camp, that was my first experience of leading a group of younger students, younger children. Exactly. So it's ironic. The first group that I had was a 2nd grade class of students.
And that's a cute age.
Oh, it was so much
adorable.
fun. It was so much fun. They idolize you. You know, you're the older kid that, you know, and you're taking them around, and it's a lot of responsibility. Obviously, we want to make sure we keep them safe, but we want to have fun with them. And that's where I found my love and my passion for working with students. And ironically, when I got my first coaching gig in my high school that I graduated from, coming back out of college, I ended up coaching in lacrosse some of those same 2nd graders.
That's fun.
It was so fun.
That's fun. I mean, some of our teachers here see their kids coming back as grown-ups. You know? So that's great. And then you just went into education, and there you are.
I knew from that point on that this was the career that I wanted to get involved in, and I went to college for it and continued that growth.
That's great. So looking at, you know, some of these things that we had going on this year, you know, a lot of things were hard, but there were a lot of things that weren't as hard as we thought they were going to be. So what do you think you might keep for next year?
You know, it's something that we reflect on and we think about as an administrative team, an administrative unit, and Mrs. Foxalter is really good about taking us through those reflective practices when we meet with an administrative council. And one thing that I have to just continue to fall back on is the mindset. We accomplished so much in such a short period of time. Some of it was easier than we thought. Some of it was a lot harder than we thought. But we did it. And that is so important. That's such a great life lesson that we even share with the students when we went around to talk to the 7th graders and 8th graders as they move up, and the 5th and 6th graders. Don't forget how much you've overcome and how flexible you had to become and how creative you had to be to change your mindset.
I think those are two really important words for this year, is flexible and creative, because You had kids in all different, you see these funny pictures of kids, posted on social media where they're like hanging all over the place. This is how my kid is doing 5th grade, and they're like upside down on the sofa. But it was how they listened and whatever.
Yeah.
So
we had to make it, everyone had to make it work for them.
and they had to work together.
And we had to work together, and you know what? And they needed support.
Yeah.
We needed support as adults. They needed support as young adults and students, and we were there for them.
Yeah.
A lot of the work that we've done together with strategic planning and being aware of culture and climate and socio wellness,
Right.
all of that played a role in getting more feedback from families, and that's something that I think is really important to continue that development as we move forward.
And we already had a lot of things in place, with our social emotional learning. We had a lot of the DBT,
Steps A,
and
DBT,
Steps
yep.
A, and was Marianne Flatley already scheduled to be working in the middle school this year?
Marianne Flatley has been at the middle school for some time, and her
Okay.
position has grown.
Right.
Has grown greatly.
So we had some things already there that just, I'm sure were helpful for the teachers as well as the kids to figure out, to have the language.
Definitely. And Dana O'Brien has been great
Right.
with her work with Steps A DBT as well.
Right.
And it's only grown, and as we've discussed at board meetings recently, that the district recognizes the need for it. We've grown and take on a lot of that, and it's allowed Pleasantville Strong to further evolve into meeting the needs of this community and our district as a partnership.
It's true. I mean, we've become, Westchester County is an area where there's so much support and everyone succeeds and succeeds and succeeds, and they go on to college succeeding. And this was a year where we were down on our knees a little bit, and we talk about grit and resilience, right? We're teaching grit and resilience. Well, this was a year where grit and resilience were definitely part of the equation.
Definitely was.
And, having things not so perfect is okay.
It's okay. There is no perfect.
There
and
is
that's
no
something that's like, if I could lump one thing up with middle school, right? What's normal? What's perfect? There is none.
There
it's
is
what we
none.
make of it.
Right.
And that's one of the great things to see as students grow through middle school. They develop their identity.
Right.
They develop in a sense of who they are, what do they believe in, and what do they want to become.
Right.
And it's so nice to see that as they get older through those years, and that grit, that perseverance,
Right.
that understanding that, you know what, this is okay.
This is okay, and learning to appreciate. I mean, I'm sure some of the things we missed, particularly in the elementary school, were the field trips, and
Sure.
in the middle school, we didn't get the Washington and the Fishkill trip. We didn't have chorus in the way we normally have chorus.
Yeah.
But then at the final hour, you pulled off Fishkill.
Yes. So
even though it was just one day.
But we were the first school to go, and that's a testament to the staff advocating for the
Right,
students,
right.
the students advocating that they want to experience
Right.
what they can, however they could,
Right.
and to Mr. Mara and the entire team for making that happen. And Fishkill was so excited to have us because
I can only imagine.
they rolled out the red carpet. I can tell you.
Sure. And then even like you did for the play, you did an online kind of a play.
We're doing an online aspect of it with
There was some
Rachel Heyman.
Was it My Fair Lady? I want to say. Yeah. So okay, you're not on the stage, but there were some creative outlets, and we got. Did we get Modified Sports? I forget.
Modified Sports was able to happen at the end of this year,
Yeah.
which is great. And
Okay.
obviously we wanted it to happen sooner. And there's things that we were able to control, and there's things that we weren't this
Right.
year. And that's
Right.
part of that grit and that resilience.
Right.
But at the end of the year, where we've been able to come from where we started,
Yeah.
so much growth and so much of our students' development at the key of that.
Yeah,
and what
I
we can
agree.
provide to them. We brought students back throughout the year at different points and identified different groups and subgroups that weren't always on the forefront of like, okay, we need them to get some support, because the atypical student that needed support, it wasn't the same profile.
Right.
And that this year we had to get very creative with how we looked at that.
And I want to remind you, we were in our conversation when you were talking about, the mindset and surveying the students, understanding the culture and the shifts of everything going on, and how flexible you had to be just even with your grading policy. You said you changed that several times throughout the year, because what was the standard 2 years ago, because of the way students were able to get their work done,
Definitely. Definitely, and that's part of being flexible and being grounded and keeping a finger to the pulse. If we didn't have the systems and supports set up to get feedback from families, to get feedback from our staff, to get feedback from our students, communication not only should go top down, but it's so important to come bottom up for leaders to be able to make informative decisions and appropriate change.
Right, and I loved, you know, the what, the how, and the why. You know, what are the students learning? How they're learning it, why they're learning it, and that whole thing that it's interwoven with why it matters.
Definitely. So we have done a lot of curriculum work, as we've discussed at many meetings through the Board of Education. But in addition to just what they're learning, as you reference, how and why for the students, the why are we learning this? Where is this applicable in real life? Make it come to life. They just grab onto that and dive right in. It makes it meaningful to them. And it makes learning, it becomes from someone being on task versus someone being highly engaged. And there's such a difference there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then, you know, for the students, you know, of course, some families are, some people are concerned about where their students are, and I, you know, as we were able to set aside some extra dollars for next year for tutoring. But, you know, what do you think? I remember at the beginning of the year there was a conversation about iReady. Was that it? That's an assessment tool of some sort?
It's a standardized diagnostic assessment tool that our students take at the beginning of the year. It gives us a very good baseline aside, in addition to the state test. We have the state test data, we have marking period data, and we have other data that anecdotal from parents, from students, and the staff that really help us develop a rubric to identify students with need. And that's the major function of our child study teams. And that's another one of the operational aspects of my job that we take place with. And we identify students that have need. But this year what we saw is that based on the data from the iReady diagnostic, we were not, and we have longitudinal data from many years back, we weren't very different from where they were at the beginning of the year and prior years. We're going through the testing now to see where they were at the end of the year, and that's why we have those checks and balances. Using that data to drive and inform our decision making, whether it's about eating lunch outside, safety, social, emotional feelings and growth and wellness, or pure academic data and supports, that's really an important area for us at the middle school. So we have a new person that we're hiring, and we have that position posted and open that the district has allowed us to hire a full-time staff member to work next year towards identifying some of those targeted areas and do some push-in supports for students. We have our AIS classes that we're only strengthening and offering more for those students. So we have a very good system in place and some new changes to help target, because the student that was struggling this year might not have been the same reason why a student was struggling in years past.
Well, it's very true. It's so, you know, they're such unique little creatures. And the brain is so different, you know. It's for some kids who were doing well, they might have struggled because they weren't seeing their friends every day. Other kids were doing better because they weren't seeing the kids, you know. But now that
some
they're back
students
in school,
learned and excelled with the remote learning. And others were begging to come back as soon as possible. And parents advocating in the same manner. Some students really struggled with executive functioning over this time where others didn't. Some students struggled with other mental health concerns during this time where others didn't. So it only further magnifies the direction and the focus that I think, as far as Pleasantville goes, having worked in so many other districts, we're ahead of the game. But we need to continue down that path.
And it shows how diverse, you know, there really is no one size fits all in any way, shape, or form. And with all of the different things that we have in place already from several years ago, and the kids, we have great teachers. We have great, you know, there's, and the strategic plan. I mean, last night in the June 1st board meeting, Mary Fox-Walter gave an incredible update on what has already been accomplished with the strategic plan. In such a crazy year, already so many things have happened. So I think that's really great. And, you know, we just, keep a close eye on everybody.
Definitely.
Right? The
None of this-
communication lines are open.
100%. That's what I was just going to say. None of this can happen without that communication line being open with
Right.
parents to us, with students to us, with staff to us.
Yeah.
We have an unbelievable staff
Yeah.
within our school, and,
Right.
and they stepped up.
Right.
And we wouldn't have been able to accomplish what we could without the staff that we have and the district level leadership.
Right, and with the social emotional piece, there were a couple of things that were said last night that bring up, the language. If everybody, if you are able to express what's going on, then problems can be solved.
Definitely.
And things can be identified, whether it's, you've got a problem with somebody, if you've got an issue, if you can't express, then you can't get a problem solved, but down to the littlest of kids. And that's what I love with all of the work that we've been doing and are going forward to do is to, identify and embrace all of these kids. It's been a tough year, but it's been an exciting year.
It has. We've made so much growth in so many ways.
Yeah.
I don't think many people would sign up to do it all again if we had to.
Oh, please. Can we do it again? Just
Exactly.
one more year.
But
year.
I really am proud. I'm a very positive person. I like to look at the positive aspects after we tough it out and do
Right.
what we need to do.
Right.
We've made some really great growth, and it's exciting to see where the future comes.
Sure. What else? Is there anything that you know that you're definitely never going to do again, or you definitely want to bring in? Is there any parting soundbite that
You know what?
wanna...
You know what? I love that our teachers really have dived into their growth with technology.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought that I was hired 4 years ago. So when I came into the building, I learned very quickly that our building only had Wi-Fi a year or two before I got there.
Right.
And I was a little surprised, right?
Sure.
And I was like, some districts, some buildings have that, and there's different reasons. But the growth from my first day in the
Yeah.
district to where we are now,
Yeah.
not only from an infrastructure, and
Right.
that's an investment. That's a district level investment.
Right.
A board and a superintendent, they invest that. They see the worth in that. And to see it come to fruition with us being ready to provide what was needed to be provided from the professional development standpoint,
Yeah.
from the technology. Technology is great. It's not the end all be all, but when it's used appropriately as an instructional tool, you can do a lot of really great things that you can enhance.
Right.
It's not meant to take over.
No.
We learned that this year.
Right.
But it's definitely meant to enhance.
Because you
And
have
that's-
access to things.
Yes.
You have access to materials that, and we all do it. It's like, wait, what's that? What was that
course.
question again? And there you are.
We're
And-
changing so much with the professional development that our teachers are receiving and staff on so many different levels, whether it's DEI, whether it's instruction, on all these different levels. And our students are experiencing
Yeah.
their instruction in such a different and more meaningful
Right.
way. That's the direction that we
Right.
want to keep
Be
going
interesting
forward.
to see where it goes.
Definitely.
I just met two new neighbors the other day with their babies. So as I was chatting with them and saying, yes, I have a 16-year-old, and they're there with their little, 3-month-old babies, and we were talking about all of this.
Of course,
and
yeah, and the
where is it
growth.
going to go? It'll
growth.
be interesting to see.
It is, but you know what? We have some amazing people. We
Yeah.
have an unbelievably strong board,
Right.
great leaders, great community support. Pleasantville is a very special place
I think
that,
so.
I really think the direction that we're moving with a strategic plan, and as we continue that
Yeah.
strategic planning, it helps really guide and
Yeah,
focus
that's
where
true.
we're going to go.
Great. All right. Well, anything else that we need to...
I just want to thank you. Thank the families and everyone
Absolutely.
for the support, for their feedback this year.
Yeah.
And we're looking forward to another successful year next year.
Another successful year next year. All right. Well,
Definitely.
thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you, Emily.
So the conversation continues with Greg Fondy, our high school assistant principal. Thank
morning.
you for joining me at Inside Pleasantville. So, a lot goes on in your day.
Sure.
What's a day like? What's a typical day like in the life of an assistant principal in the Pleasantville High School?
I think what makes the job so unique is that there's no typical day for me.
Right.
I have a schedule of things that I would like to accomplish, things throughout the day that might be clerical in nature, but basically my day is centered around being a visible presence in the building, supporting kids, supporting teachers, supporting families. So it may be walking in the halls, visiting classrooms for instructional purposes, evaluating teachers, working with families and helping them if their son or daughter might be struggling in academics or social emotional needs.
Right.
And then also tending to the daily duties of an assistant principal, managing the building, working on scheduling. Right now, in the midst of final exams schedule.
Which is a completely different animal this year from 2 years ago. So all that stuff that was regular, our final exams, every time I look at Joe's email, it's like, wait, does my kid have one of those tests? Because it's so different this year.
The final exam schedule this year, we will conduct the exams during the, quote, regular final exam week, June 16th through the 23rd.
Right.
However, in lieu of all the Regents exams, our kids are being asked to take local assessments by their teachers.
Right.
Unique for this year is that since it's such a difficult year, those final exams will only count for one test grade of the fourth quarter. It will not be a standalone exam worth usually 10%. Now, students have the option to take the Regents exam if they would like, in 4 courses, algebra, earth science, English language arts, and or living environment, which is biology. But based on my studies this week, only a handful of students are doing that in the building.
That's interesting. I mean, there's so many different things this year. There's nothing normal. So the fact that the kids are like, well, I think I'll just forget that test. And it's a New York State test, so if the kids are going on to other states school, other states for college, it's not as critical.
Correct.
But I mean, all the different things with the kids, I can't even. And this year, you're greeting the kids every single day at the front door.
The greeting is a wonderful byproduct of COVID because. We greet kids at 5 or 6 different doorways every morning. So kids are assigned by their last name to enter a specific door for the purpose of their health screening. So students and parents complete the health screener prior to coming in.
If we're lucky.
And then what happens is, if they don't, then they're sent to the gymnasium, or we also have thermometers and questionnaires for them as well.
There.
It's a great way to check the students if they've passed the health screener, but also to meet kids every day, to talk to them. Prior to COVID, we did spend a lot of time outside meeting kids in the front circle. But now it's more formalized.
And you're seeing them there. Hi, Trey, how you doing? Sally, good to see you again today. And they look at you, and I'm sure they're much more comfortable as the year has gone on. Hey, Mr. Fondy,
It's a nice way to meet and start the day. We dedicate right now between 7:45 and 8:15 every day. In my normal life before COVID, that was the busiest part of my day, to get the day running. All the little things that I need to get going for the day, either communicating to a teacher or to a student. So now I'm able to speak to students as they come in. And then it's just a shift in my day.
That to-do list.
Yeah, the to-do list is a different to-do list this year. However, it's manageable. It's manageable.
What's the most fun part of being an assistant principal in our high school?
I like finding out about what great things kids are doing throughout the day. I'm going to give you a specific example. As an assistant principal, prior to this meeting right now, I happened to meet a former student of mine from the class of 2010, and he let me know that he went back to school to become a lawyer.
Oh, wow.
And I found that to be tremendously rewarding. And I spoke to him, and I'm in the process of telling his guidance counselor. So finding out about accomplishments on a day-to-day basis, I always work with kids, and I ask them, what's one great thing that's going to happen to you today at school? Or what's a challenge? And then if they ask me or tell me, I don't really know, then I'll give them an example of what I'm looking forward for today. And then I'll ask them, be specific. What about this class? What's a good thing that you're looking forward to in this class? And then you get a conversation started.
It's great.
You also might learn something about the kid that I need to follow up on that I would never know before.
That's a great question, because it makes them pause for a minute. And I ask my own kids questions like that. What good thing happened? What made you laugh today? Or I'll ask what their friend ate for lunch. Not what they ate for lunch, what their friend ate for lunch. Because it makes them think, I don't know. Let me, it just gives them that awareness.
It's a similar question that families are also asking for guidance at the dinner table. To become specific with your question and answers to get more about what your high school kid is doing in school.
What questions, not yes, no.
I also enjoy visiting classrooms a lot. In an informal basis. It's not uncommon for kids to see me in and out of classrooms for a couple of minutes a day, just walking in,
Sure.
checking out what's happening, offering some advice of what's happening in the topic.
Sure.
If I was trained as an English and social studies teacher,
Yeah.
I will go in there and then find out what's happening in one of the classes.
Yeah.
Maybe it's current events. Maybe it's a topic about a book. So I enjoy that a lot as well.
That's right, to see the kids in action. And
Sure.
this year, with smaller groups,
Right.
a little bit more opportunity to have conversation, but now I'm sure it must feel so good to have the halls busy
Sure.
again.
I often have a little informal list of my top 10 moments as an assistant principal in the high school
Okay.
that's not related to academics.
Okay.
And it's all things after school.
Oh, yeah.
And I always think about certain instances that I really thought were wonderful experiences.
Yeah.
One of my top 5 was several years ago, the Man of La Mancha.
Yeah.
It was the scene right before the intermission.
Okay.
And the
Which
lead
scene was
singer, it was the song by Miss McCarthy, is it I Dream? Or,
Okay.
and it was an incredible way to end before intermission.
Yeah.
And that was because the whole ensemble was out there, and it was just a wonderful way to end that first half of the play.
Yeah.
I have other instances in athletics,
Sure.
and art. I also enjoy visiting the art class, 9th period,
Yeah.
because that's the AP art. And those kids stay after school.
Yeah.
And just walking in and seeing what they're working on.
Right.
I enjoy
right.
that a lot as well.
Yeah, just that free time to create and hang with their friends, and I like that with their art department. I remember doing the back to school night when my oldest was in high school, and Mr. Marin saying, whatever they want to, whatever class they want, wherever they are, we'll create it for them, because if they're ceramics or they're this or they're that, the space is here and we can create
right.
that. And
That's right.
for those creative minds, that's really great. So here's a different question. When did you decide you wanted to be an educator? Were you like 10 years old? Were you?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, because although I was not an educator right out of high school, I went to the business school. I mean, at the time, you're 16, 17 years old. You're trying to make a decision
Sure.
the rest of your life. And I didn't really know, but I really began really liking the idea of being an educator while I was in high school. I was very involved in high
Okay.
school. I grew up in a small town in Westchester. I was very involved in music and sports,
Okay.
morning announcements. I knew a lot of people. I was always involved in something at the school, and I enjoyed that. And then later on, I spent considerable hours volunteering.
Okay.
Volunteering and coaching in the town that I grew up in,
Okay.
mostly in baseball, which was my first love in terms of sports. And I really enjoyed that. So that's the beginning of my love of education.
Okay.
And then people will ask, were you a high school teacher? I never was a high school teacher. I was always a middle school teacher.
Middle school, right.
And I always taught 6th grade, and to me that was the magical grade. I loved teaching 6th grade. And I enjoyed that tremendously. At a school prior to Pleasantville and then at Pleasantville. I enjoy the interactions with kids of that age.
Yeah.
And then when I was asked to come over to the high school, I've also enjoyed that as well,
Yeah.
from a different perspective, working with kids.
Every day's, the brain, the kids say the darndest things. So it is, my mother was a 5th grade teacher.
Adults also.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
My mother liked 5th grade because to her, that grade, which I think 6 is quite similar, they're still young enough to
Correct.
believe everything you say, but old enough to kind of challenge you a little
Correct.
bit. So it leads to some interesting
Sure.
dialogue in the classroom. So
I
she
enjoyed
really
it.
enjoyed
We had
that.
some really engaging projects for the kids. As you're right, they were able to write. They were still young men and women. We were able to write and express our opinions and
Right.
literature about literature. At the same time, we would have a lot of fun in class and really enjoy that.
Yeah.
But that was my start
Right.
in education.
What are your favorite things to do? So when you work, you work so closely with Joe, it's one of the things I think that's unique about Pleasantville. I'm assuming,
Sure.
I haven't lived in another school district, but your roles are so intertwined. It's
Correct.
just, do I go to Mr. Fondy
Sure.
for this? Do I go to Mr. Palumbo for that? You both seem to really work so closely and overlap.
Sure. I think one of the main reasons is just logistics of the spacing of the offices. I think it's integral for Pleasantville that our offices are right next to each other.
Yeah, so great.
Right? In some other schools, the assistant principal, or in larger schools where they might have multiple assistant principals,
Right.
that person might be in a different wing.
Yeah.
But we are there all day long,
Yeah.
from 7:15 in the morning all the way to late at night, discussing students.
Hey Joe, what
That's
about
right.
this? Hey
And so we
Greg.
discuss that, and we have different opinions, because I don't think that an educator or an administrator should be making singleton decisions.
Yeah.
You have to work together and collaboratively. So that might mean that I have questions, I'll ask Joe. I'll ask my school psychologist. I'll work with the guidance counselor on either student questions or policy questions.
Sure.
That's important because not one person has the answer.
No.
Having said that, unless you have a dynamic, friendly relationship, professional friendship with that person, it's very difficult to
Yeah.
get for the benefit of the school.
Sure. And I mean, I can remember seeing you guys jogging up
Correct.
Bedford Road together. So
That's correct.
hashing out baseball scores or issues with strategizing what
Yeah.
needs to happen the next day in the classroom.
Well-
I mean, because it is an integral, important relationship with your
Yeah.
teacher evaluations and student issues and
Sure.
family issues. I mean, there's so much that's happening fast in education.
Yep,
It's
it is.
unbelievable,
And
right?
I think one of the things that we do, though, is because of the nature of society now, with instantaneous answers, I have to hold back.
Yeah.
So I can't respond to a teacher or a student. I need to think about that answer, and I'll tell people, let me think about it. Let me think about what happened, and I'll get back to you most likely either today or tomorrow. So I've been able to do some research on the topic and to come up with an answer that would benefit the student,
Right.
rather than a quick decision without thinking of
Right.
of what the consequences might be of that decision.
The power of pause.
Correct. That's
Take
correct.
a moment,
That's correct.
collect the information, and as we all know, there's three sides to every story.
That's correct. Yes, that's right.
And, with these developing kids and the emotions of families and teachers, it's important to wait. And you've had that experience to see sometimes something is like, we must have a decision immediately.
Right.
And it's like, well, let's just see what really happened
right.
here.
That's
and
right.
that's really important, And this year, so much has changed, and I will say one of them, just looking at my notes from some of the things we talked about yesterday, one of the things I have to say as a parent, I really love Schoology. Has that been, do you find that the teachers are enjoying
Yeah.
Schoology?
Schoology, for those that don't know, is a unified system where we have all of our grades, information, and postings to one central location.
It's great.
Yeah, it helped out. First of all, it helped out this year because we were still remote learning for some kids,
Right.
and we had a hybrid schedule.
Right.
Last year, we had a website where teachers were posting. But yeah, this is a better system because everything is in one place.
It's in one place. I love that the calendar, all the classes are in one calendar.
Sure.
And you can color code it. So my son color coded it. So when he looks at the monthly calendar or
Right.
the weekly calendar, he can see all his subjects and what's going on, and it's an instant snapshot, which we didn't have in the before, and all the teachers, and there's some different unique things that
Sure.
teachers are posting in slightly different ways or using Castle Learning or whatever. So there's uniqueness to it, which is important. But I love that
Yeah.
main calendar. I think it's really helpful
Sure.
for everybody. So what do you think you'll keep from this year versus
Sure.
oh, we're never doing that
Sure.
again?
Well, one thing is Schoology, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
Schoology, that's not really related to COVID.
Right.
But we'll keep Schoology. It's interesting now because if we ask people about posting, let's say, a future event,
Yeah.
we still, as a society, post to very different places.
Yeah.
Facebook,
Yeah.
Instagram, the school website. I post everything that's going on in the school through our school website,
Right.
And through our Gazette, and then we have postings. And Joe Palumbo has a weekly update
Right.
with links. But still, we go to many different sources of information to find the same information.
It's amazing that we have to do that.
I just think it's preferences and people's whatever social platform they might
Right.
like, as opposed to other people.
Sure.
I still use the Pleasantville High School website as one-stop shopping.
I do
for me.
too. That's the first place I go.
yeah.
If I need something, and I don't go, I go first to the website,
Right.
and the second place I go is the PCO, because
Sure.
their weekly posting picks up
Correct.
just about everything
Correct.
that's going on, and I purposely don't. I've learned not to delete their webs, because sometimes I'll
Sure.
clean up and delete old emails, but I don't delete the PCO because that's a running list of everything that's going on.
And they include all the Pleasantville, the PCO information, either fundraisers or sales or
Exactly.
information there. And so I
Exactly.
use it as a tool as well.
Sure.
I have a folder on my email account where I have all the
All
PCO
of that.
accounts for the whole year, all the postings, and I'll
Right.
use that as cross-reference. Your question was, what will we keep next year
Yeah.
due to the interesting learning environment from this year? Number one is I want to keep the same positive atmosphere of the kids this year, even in struggling times.
Yeah.
And we had a different way to have our kids eat lunch this year. Yeah. This year's kids, because there was limits to the amount of kids that could occupy the high school cafeteria,
Right.
we had to remove the tables. The
Right.
round tables, which we found to be the best tables rather than the long rectangular ones,
Right.
because you're face-to-face in conversation. So we had to put regular student desk chairs in there with a limit of about 50.
I know, it was really
Right?
kind of a drag.
But the good thing that happened was that kids are eating outside
Yeah.
in the front circle. So we will have approximately 100 kids in the front circle. And there are a lot of wonderful makeshift places to eat.
Yeah.
And little walls that we never really knew that could be used.
Right, right.
And we closed off the front circle. And so kids can sit in the front circle and have lunch. That by far has been a wonderful addition to the environment of the high school. We also opened up the gymnasium in the cold months to kids to have lunch because they needed a place to go.
They needed a place to go.
That's something that I don't believe we'll do next year. But the gym was
Not the
used
gym, but-
that was used during lunch periods because we just needed to have
Right.
a space for them to eat.
It was so great to drive past the school on the few occasions that I'd have to drop something off
Right.
somewhere and just see all the kids. It was almost like a
Right.
college campus kind of feeling, when
Absolutely.
you see that mall look with the kids all outside and sitting on the circle, and,
Sure.
and it just is nice and chill.
Yep.
They need that chill time.
Yep. I'll give you a couple other examples
Yeah.
about changing ways, and I can even talk about maybe some academics.
Yeah.
In addition to the front circle, that also made way for more opportunities for clubs and activities to have special events. So rather than having a table in the cafeteria, for example, Pleasantville Strong or the GSA or other groups
Right.
will have a table outside at the flagpole. And so now kids are engaging outside. The events are taking place outside. And it's a way for kids to be outside during lunch rather than being in the building. That was a nice takeaway from
Right.
COVID. Other ways that we're going to use the COVID learning experience, I do like Zoom in certain ways. I had all of my parent meetings with Zoom. It's a great platform in the future if a parent can't make a parent meeting.
That is really true, because to get everybody
Sure.
at the same time
Sure.
is complicated. So you're right. I can see that Zoom would be beneficial.
Sure. Face-to-face conversation is the best way to communicate.
Yeah.
But if we're having a basic compliance meeting or a quick 15-minute meeting,
Sure.
Zoom is wonderful.
Sure.
We could also have phone conferences as well, but I think people would rather have the Zoom as
The
opposed
Zoom,
to
and that's
the
true.
phone.
You've already established that relationship.
Right.
Because some of your meetings, like the standard 504,
Sure.
where it's like, okay, everybody's on the same page. We just have to have this
Sure.
formal, 15, as
Right.
opposed to everybody coming in. And
Right.
it saves time for your staff, because then,
Correct.
your counselors and psychologists, it's a much more efficient use of their time as well.
And in terms of classroom, if students are at home, the plan obviously is for next year to have everyone back.
Sure.
It hasn't been fully proposed yet or made a mandate at the school.
Right.
But if that happens, we can still have Zoom and team learning for those students who are unable to go to school who may be sick.
Right.
They may be able to access their education that way.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's another way that we've learned from COVID.
Because they could be sick with like mono, where
Sure.
they have to be out for 2 weeks, or
Sure.
some kind, or a super broken leg,
Sure.
or
That's exactly right.
something like that, where they just really can't be in school.
So the Schoology helps with that.
Yeah.
The Zoom, and what we use is a Microsoft Teams platform in Pleasantville.
right.
So Teams has a platform similar to Zoom,
Yeah.
where the classes are working with the teacher in the classroom and outside the classroom.
Right,
Those are some changes that I see happening for
Right.
next year. I do like to go back to what was happening in the past, where obviously everyone's in the classroom.
Yeah.
Right now we're sharing a lot of spaces in the high school because of the size of rooms.
Like the library.
The library is being used because if it's a large class, we can't get those same numbers due to spacing in some of the more traditional classrooms. The math and science rooms are larger rooms, so we are using those spaces much more than we were in the past because some classrooms are much smaller.
Right.
So those are some of the changes
Some of those
I see.
changes, you know, and I know from my own son, he's, as much as he kind of was enjoying in the beginning, like not going to school every day, he is clearly much happier to be back in school every single day. You know, he was like, and some of his friends, they were like, yeah, I'm ready to be back at school every day. So I think for most age groups, it gave them that moment to say, oh, I do miss that, as much as, oh, I hate school, you know, that kind of thing. Then they're like, oh, but it shows all the different, that whole social emotional.
I can give you a concrete example about how the school is changing right now for the better. During COVID and during remote learning, every week I manage the building in terms of what's happening in the building after school, what are the special events. It's a logistical thing.
Oh my God.
So it's a report, and basically all the people involved get this report. You know, we're having an assembly, we need these supplies, we need microphones, podiums, etc. I really haven't needed to use this report all year. But now I need to use the report again. Just in terms of the graduation, special events coming up, using the spaces more and more. So now that was a good sign that I was actually talking to some people this morning. We've got to get that same form back because we are back in full swing at the end of the year in terms of special events.
No, it's great. I mean, it's such a bizarre year, but I think we've learned a lot. I think the kids have learned a lot. I think the teachers, I mean, we talked about reimagining education, and look at how much they've pushed at the seams with different creative, flexible ways of teaching.
I think that's exactly right, and I can give you some examples. With Schoology, teacher lessons now, many years ago, the integration of technology was more that you checked a box off. That they were using technology, and I was a member of that teaching group of people. This is before I taught, before there was a smart board, before people had computers in the room. But I'm really noticing now is teachers are integrating technology in everyday lessons, either in videos or work to be done online and submitted online. Also, it's a great way for kids who are unable to attend class that day to access their education. So a student might be, the teacher might be lecturing to the students in the high school. There might be some ancillary videos regarding the topic. There might be a PowerPoint presentation. The students might be completing some type of work organizer. I'm finding that is a tremendous difference now. The work organizer, that the teacher is providing templates for the students to complete, and then they can use that for studying purposes and or writing essays. And then now I'm finding that video and technology is an everyday thing. It's not a sometime thing.
No, it's true. It's true. And that's where people in the workforce are using it as well. So it, you know, there is a lot of silver linings, and I know that, you know, some families are concerned about students and where they are academically, but, you know, with all of the social emotional work that we have going on at the school, I mean, we were already doing so much prior, but, you know, we've got the money saved, put aside in the budget for any extra tutoring. I mean, you were already doing tutoring this year, but there's that space in it for next year. And, you know, I think that you and Joe Palumbo and our counselors and our psychologists are just so in tuned and aware. And we've got a lot of quality people in the building. So I believe that if there's any students that are a half a step to the side, I'm sure that with all of the attention that you're providing, they'll be back to where they're, you know, and I mean, they've learned so many different things, so it's not really, you know, there's nothing lost, right? It's different. There's grit and resilience that they've learned, which is really important. So. All right, well, is there, I mean, we could sit here for a long time and go on because there's so much that goes on in a given day. Is there anything else that you know, we've got the plays back. I'm going to go to you've got the chorus, the spring concert's going to be in the front circle next week, which I'm looking forward to.
The play,
that's going to be great.
The band, orchestra, and chorus will be performing in the front circle next week for parents of those students.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
They're asked to bring their lawn chairs.
Sure.
And we'll work with them for next week. We've had some other events throughout the year with the PCO providing with food truck. We had music out there one night.
That is so much. I mean, that's that partnership. You know, the PCO is like, what can we do to make it fun and engaging?
Sure.
So,
and that's another takeaway, because I believe really, you know, the wintertime, the winter concert.
Right.
But there's no reason when the weather's nice that various ensembles cannot be showcased outside in the front lawn.
Absolutely.
There's really, I don't know of any better places around where you can do that.
Absolutely.
And have just informal gatherings. And our kids want to play. We had several students that are their internship for senior year, they were working on making music and playing music. So they've played at various lunch periods.
That's great.
They've played at these events, and I look forward to that in the future.
That's great.
You know, you talked about flexibility. I know Joe and I are always flexible.
Yeah.
We had to be much more flexible this year in terms of working with families and students, and working with faculty as well with their own families.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a key to success for us.
It's true. It's true. Flexible, pivoting,
Sure.
fluid, open mind.
Sure.
You know, we're all human beings,
Right.
and that's the way the world goes around.
Great.
All right. Well,
I thank you for having me today.
I thank you for sitting and joining me and talking about 2021. Let's go for next year. I'm looking forward to it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. And now I'm here with our Bedford Road School Assistant Principal, Rachel Hunger. So thank you for joining me. I've just talked with Greg and Adam. So we've heard about the high school and we've heard about the middle school. Now we've got the elementary school. What's it like being the assistant principal? You have so many different, it's such a different day because the kids are just in their own classrooms. What's a day like for you?
So I think it's, you know, an elementary school is such a unique place, like you said, because they're primarily in their classrooms and they're together the whole day. And I would say for myself, one of my greatest joys and my responsibilities is really getting into the classrooms and seeing the students and getting to know them. Visiting, whether it's because there's a special activity going on and someone let me know about it, or just popping into a room to see what's going on in a regular math lesson or a reading lesson.
Right.
And it's a great way to get to know the kids, to get to know the teachers in the school. That's probably my favorite part of the day, I would say.
Just to see these little beings as they're learning and you know, manipulating and negotiating and all of that.
Absolutely. And then when they run down a couple hours later, because they just have to show you the finished writing piece that you walked in on, or how they solved that math problem, or I told so-and-so to take a picture and show you, you know, Mrs. Long had to show me what we were doing on that. So
that's really
I love that.
That validation.
Yeah, and it's and I find that it's not unique, but when you're that young, that excitement about learning and about having adults watch you learn is just such an amazing thing to see.
Yeah. What are some of the things? So you know, the principal and the assistant principal in Pleasantville, they're so entwined. So what are like the typical, you know, responsibilities of the assistant principal?
Sure. So, and I feel very fortunate that I really and truly feel like I've been able to work alongside Peggy, especially this year. But one of the things that's the responsibility of the assistant principal in the school is to run the child study team. And that we meet weekly.
And what is the child study team?
Sure. So it's an opportunity for whether it be teachers or parents or really anybody in the school or students themselves to advocate if there's anything going on around a need. It could be an academic need, it could be a social need, an emotional need, and we can sit and we meet with the teachers. We have our psychology team there, our occupational therapists, speech therapists. So there's a team of us that are there. And we talk about what's going on with the student, and we come up together with what's a plan for how do we best support this student going forward. And it's once a week, but it gives you such an insight into what's really going on with particular students. And it allows you to follow up with them, allows you to connect with families, have really meaningful
and kids develop at such different rates that, you know, it might be nothing or it might be something. So the earlier you know that, oh wait, they need some support in this or that, it's so much better.
And that's where I find it so helpful that we have so many different people that are a part of that group who are coming at it from different angles, who help you to think of things in a way that you may not have. And exactly like you said, Emily, everybody develops at a different at a different rate, and sometimes there's somebody who sees something that you didn't see it that way.
And
it's really interesting.
Perspectives are so important because some of the teachers who have been there longer, I've seen this kind of thing, or oh, I was just reading an article about this, or whatever. So, so the child study, so you meet once a week with that, right?
We meet once a week.
Wow.
It's how, for us at BRS, it's how we start our week. And it's a really nice start to the week because then it gives us the rest of the week that if there's anything that needs to be followed up or visits to the classroom or anything like that, it really gives us the time within the week to make that happen.
What else do you do?
Nothing.
Is that all you
nothing.
do?
That's it. We're done. So I think one thing that's also unique to the assistant principals here in Pleasantville is we run the school safety teams. And while that is probably a behind-the-scenes, day-to-day thing that is going on throughout our schools, there's formalized drills and plans and things like that go around that.
Yeah, that's big. And now I love that new front entranceway.
Oh, yes.
That is so great.
It's also very welcoming.
It's
when you
really
walk in.
welcoming. And it feels like it's been there forever.
Yes, it's just such a natural part, and there's this long bench, and it's been great for different opportunities, and was not built for this purpose. But this year we have, for our remote learners, we've had parents come to pick up supplies for the students. So having that space also,
they could just run in and out.
For parents to be able to come in, just pick up what they need. Mrs. Fralick's a friendly face there, kind of giving them a wave.
She's been there a long
time. It's been a great addition to the school.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's really great. I love seeing everybody out on the playground now that the weather's warm and I'm out walking my dog a lot, so I see all the kids outside. Yeah. What's like drop off and pickup like? Because that was, one of the things that I love about when I was a parent in the elementary school was that whole pickup in seeing the teacher every day, having the kids have that little freedom to play. So that's a little different now, right?
I'd say that's probably our biggest change in terms of day-to-day operation.
Yeah.
So dismissal this year definitely looks a little bit different, and it's changed throughout the year. When we went from hybrid, exactly, back into our full mode. But right now, we have 3 different walking lines, and you're organized by grade level.
Okay.
And you go where the youngest person that you are picking up is going to be. So we have a kindergarten line, a first grade line, and then a 2nd through 4th grade line. And the parents come. We have 3 different megaphones going on 3 different channels of walkie-talkies. Oh my gosh. And we page the kids' names, the teachers, and they know based on who is calling them which exit they need to go to.
Oh my gosh.
And it's a pretty amazing thing to see happen every day, and it's just it's proof of the amount of teamwork, honestly, that went into that.
Yeah.
And it's not only planning that happened at the school; it's feedback from the parents that we've had along the way to kind of tweak where we're at. And I agree with you. I think we're missing the pickup and the highs and the buys and those quick check-ins.
It's what's unique about Pleasantville is that opportunity to see the teacher every day and to make friends with the other families. It really, some of the people that I know that I'm friendly still are people that I met on the playground, and that's a very unique thing, which hopefully next year we'll be able to go back to that again.
And I'd say one of the positive changes that we've seen, at least with dismissal, at the beginning of the year, we had a car line. And a lot of people use the car line, and we had that during the hybrid, when we were in the hybrid, but when we came full back, the amount of time that it would take to dismiss one car at a time, which is going to take too long. But one of the positives from that we've seen is that as people are waiting online, they're talking with each other. You're meeting people you maybe didn't have a chance to meet before. There's somebody new who's standing in front of you.
Right.
So yes, it looks different, and no, there's not coming onto the playground and going right up to your child's teacher, but there's still that kind of waiting outside of the gate that always happen, and that opportunity for people to meet each other.
The community is so important, and as we talk like with the strategic plan and social emotional health and Pleasantville Strong, and I know is going to start coming down a little bit, having conversations in the elementary school, and some parents may feel, oh, my kid's a little too young for this conversation, but having those relationships, I mean, you will need those friends as your kid is getting a little bit older. And, hey, my son says he's coming over to your house. Is that really true?
Yes,
and,
exactly.
You don't feel so awkward calling somebody when you've had that conversation and that relationship building in the elementary school. So that is, again, that's what's so unique. What are some of the things you think you miss and we're going to bring back next year?
So we are in the planning stages and very hopeful
Yeah.
of. I'd say one of the biggest things that we're missing the class plays. The kindergarten circus, the class plays. I think if you speak to any older students in Pleasantville, when they talk about being in BRS, they can remember exactly every play they were in, what part they played, and those are the things you really carry with you. It was one of the first things that struck me about this school as being such a special place.
Right.
And I know that that's one of the things we're really and truly missing the experience of this
Mrs.
year.
Brown's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and Eileen Eustace's Wizard of Oz. It's like, oh, I was this, I was that. Yeah, I know. I agree. The play is it's such a community for the classroom to do that.
Yeah, when you're looking back, you're like, I was Dorothy and Miss Eustace, but I was Dorothy too.
Right.
And it becomes this connection thing for some of the plays that continue year after year.
Yeah.
And
But you did Revolutionary Day.
We did. So I'd say, we feel very fortunate that as the spring has gone on, we've been able to bring back some opportunities in a different way. We just had our field days this week.
Oh, okay, good.
Today's got a little rained out, so we'll have to reschedule that. But the kids had a blast at field day. We were able to bring back 4th grade Rev Day. We were very much missing our parent volunteers being a part of it, but we were so grateful and thankful everything was organized and ready to go.
Did you have it? I think you didn't do it at Soldiers and Sailors, right?
No, we did everything on the BRS playground.
But that's okay.
And that was fun. You know what? And we had said there's something about marching down to Soldiers and Sailors and having the experience there. But for this group of 4th graders, this was their experience.
Absolutely. It's totally fine. And I think that's one of the things, what's hard about traditions is the expectation of, well, my sibling needs to have that same experience or my child needs to have that same experience. But there's new traditions. And it's okay. It's nice to make new traditions. And some of our kids maybe don't mind that they didn't have this, that, or the other thing.
No, and like I said, those are their memories of their Rev Day. The 4th graders are still talking about it. They had a blast doing it.
Yeah.
And it was just a great experience for them. And from that comes new opportunities. So, this Rev Day, there was a chance really for teachers to go around with their class and really be this intimate part of Rev Day with their students that in the past, of course, our teachers have always been there, but it looked a little different. For Field Day this year, our teachers are the one, they ran the different stations. We feel very fortunate that it's always our parents that are volunteering to do that, and we're looking forward to getting back to that.
Right.
But there's something really funny about seeing your teacher sit on like a hippity hop and bounce their way down the turf that the kids were just cracking up with.
I can only imagine.
So we're trying to look at it as like a glass half full of, there was a new opportunity for kids that...
That's very, I'm laughing at that image of some of the teachers on a hippity hop.
I said Mrs. Veccarello yesterday, I said, you are born to run this station. So.
Well, they used to have a basketball game with the teachers, and I think just the teachers, I'm not sure if the students. And then a couple of times they did a volleyball game tournament with the parents and the teachers.
Okay.
And that was in the elementary school. That was fun. That was a PTA thing. They only did that a couple of times. There's so many different events that you could possibly run. But that is fun to see your teacher in a slightly different light, because you think of your teacher as just this teacher.
Yes, exactly. So there was something fun about seeing everybody with their sneakers and their t-shirts and matching their classes yesterday, and the kids had a good laugh.
No, that's great. That's great. So, talk about, I know that some parents are a little concerned because the world was different this year. And, I know that you've talked about at some of the board meetings, the data. And Adam was talking about iReady. And you use iReady.
We do, yes.
Yeah. So, I know, and we have some money set aside for kids that might need a little extra, but, what do you think?
So I think as we're looking, so we do use iReady, and we also use the DRA, which is a reading assessment that we do. And it's a one-on-one opportunity for you to sit down, you read a book with your teacher, you answer some questions, you summarize it.
Great.
So it's a great tool to see where kids are at in reading. And we're finishing that up right now, and I think it goes to exactly what you spoke to, Emily. It's an opportunity for us to look as a whole as a school, to see where we stand, and that could speak to some curriculum adjustments if they're needed. It's a chance to celebrate where our students are at. Look at students who'd received targeted interventions this year, and there's a lot of celebration for the students that, we said, look, they need a little boost this year, and that boost gave them what they needed.
Gave them what they, and they're kids. Their brains are very malleable now.
Yes.
And they learn fast, and we have such great teachers. So if you see with that data point, like, oh, this kid or that kid, okay, and they can pick up.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, we are very fortunate, not only Pleasantville, but other districts as well, to have some money that could be earmarked, to providing some targeted intervention for students who may need it going forward.
Yeah.
And data looking something like iReady or the DRA is one piece of something that we can look at to help identify students who going forward may need some extra support.
And that's sometimes where I guess the technology can help, because you can add extra pieces for a student. I would think the teacher can be a little bit flexible in the materials that they can get their hands on for specific things.
And I think, for us this year, so Seesaw, this was the first time we had engaged in that platform this year. And it came out of a need of a pandemic, but what we've learned from it, and it's something we're continuing with next year, that it's an amazing tool to be able to give students something to do independently. You as the teacher instantaneously receive back that work and give your kids feedback, and then they can go right back into that exact same piece of work.
That's amazing that you can do that. That's because that's so important when you get your feedback 2, 3, 4 days later, it doesn't have the same impact. But when you get the feedback right away, it's like, it's not that you did this wrong. It's like, oh, look at how, it's different. It's a different feeling, I would imagine.
Absolutely. And I'd say for us, one of the challenges, especially with our kindergarten, our first grade students, is independence. And how can you give them something that's not only appropriate for them to be working on, but that that they're having a meaningful interaction and not having misconceptions. So this tool, Seesaw was not born out of a pandemic. It's how it came to us. It's been there, but it's been a great opportunity to just see what it can do, so that we think about how do we use some of the tools that we embarked on this year, that being our major one, going forward.
Right. That's great. So the logistics of the school is a big thing that I know you get involved with, and I can, just getting everybody from here and there is, and you didn't have your full gym this year.
We did not, which has it's presented some challenges. While we were in a hybrid, we had half the gym to use.
Okay.
The weather this fall was on our side. I mean, really through Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's true.
It was beautiful outside. And, something we always come to learn, kids don't mind cold weather, adults do. So the kids, for the most part, we were outside for PE this year. And it was amazing.
Yeah.
And they were great.
They just need the air.
They love the air. They love to run around. They came up bundled up, and kids are just happy to be outside.
Right. And the flexibility, I remember at one of the board meetings, Peggy was, or you, I forget which one, you talked about how you split some of the schedule, like the lunch and the recess, so that you had it at different times of the day.
We did. So we took a different approach this year. Like you said, the logistics of this year in particular, kind of rethinking everything.
Right.
And one of the things as we were planning of the year was, how do we give kids opportunities to leave their classroom, to move? What are key times of the day to be able to take mass breaks, ideally outside? And so we separated lunch and recess to 2 different times of the day.
Right.
So for example, our 4th graders right now, they're out for recess at 9 a.m. and their lunch is not until 1 p.m. And in there they have a related art, so that there's kind of every grade level has these 3 chunks of the day where you're out of your classroom.
That's great.
Where there's recess, that's a natural mass break. Where there's lunch, that's a natural mass break. And then there's one other time or more than that the teacher would be planning.
So do you think you'll do that? You'll stay with it?
So that has been kind of going back and forth. I think we made a big pro and con list of the lunch recess. Ultimately, the kids having that longer break together
is better
for some of the students that really just kind of need a lengthy amount of time. We laughed, it's no longer a challenge, but kindergartners and first graders eating lunch in a half-hour time period, especially in the beginning of the year, doesn't seem like it should be challenging, because people watching might say, well, I have a 5-year-old, they're done with dinner in 10 minutes.
Right.
But it's very challenging to get it done in such a set amount of time where they have to leave and somebody else can come in.
And
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Like all over
you
the
forgot
place.
that you didn't open your sandwich, and then when someone else is done helping and they get to you 5 minutes later, they help you out. But then you're already kind of a few minutes in. So I do think ultimately we're going to go back to lunch and recess being together. But one of the other things that came out of this, we've never done this before, is we have signups for outdoor times. We've identified all sorts of outdoor spaces that we've really made use out of, and we have teachers signing up for extra recess because their classes earned it, or kids this year for their birthday, number one choice to celebrate your birthday has been extra recess.
Right. Sure.
So opportunities like that, where in the past it may have been a treat that you'd bring in for your class, it's really kind of transformed into these experiences that I can have with my friends, my classmates.
We have a dance party, or sit outside do a story time in the garden. I guess the garden, you didn't have, your PTA parents must be so itching to get back in the building. I can only imagine.
They are, and I have to say, I mean, they have been such an amazing support throughout the whole year, and we feel their presence, although not physically in the building.
They're all just there. They're like, can we get in the building yet? Can we get in the building yet?
But our garden committee for the PTA has been incredible this year. They took this amazing experience that kids have, and they completely reinvented it.
Wow.
The garden lessons went into the classroom. Every student in the school had a chance to plant. Their plants went out to the garden. They had a chance to visit the garden. Wow. We had second graders out there a few weeks ago. They planted seeds and they picked their own radish, and they brought it home, and they were so excited to carry their little brown paper bags home.
Sure, right.
But that was completely the PTA. They put their minds to how can we, are you willing to continue with this in the school? The answer was, of course, yes. We would love to think of some way to bring it back between Zooms, and it's just amazing.
That garden, that was started, my oldest son was in 4th grade when Andrea Garbarini and her friend Hillary, I forget Hillary's last name, but they started the garden. And now you've got it in the middle school and you've got it in the high school, and I think other schools are doing the garden, and it's such a great PTA that it's another example of the PTA starts something and it's such a complete part of the educational program.
Yeah. Well, one of my running jokes is when I was interviewing, when I got the job, and they were, saying, here are some of the responsibilities that you're going to have as the assistant principal. Oh, one of them is the garden. And I'm like, well, that's a shame. I don't have a green thumb. It's beautiful, and this will not be around for much longer with me in charge of it. So this is probably like, no, you help with the scheduling. I'm like, scheduling. I can do scheduling. That's fine. But they're like, the parents do the gardening. I'm like, that's good to know because it's really beautiful, and you wouldn't want my hands on it.
Yeah. No, it's great, and you've got the big sunflowers and stuff like that. And now you're going to be transitioning into the big seat.
Yes.
So now that which is kind of nice because now you've been in the AP spot, so you know what you need, and I'm not going to put you on the spot to tell me any of that, so don't worry. But that's it's very exciting to have somebody new coming in, and with the new year, with all that you've learned from COVID and before.
It's a unique time, and for myself to transition, you kind of come with this understanding of some of the traditions and some of the things that we're really looking forward to getting back to. But with a year and a half of learning that we've done since some of those things have been able to happen, and as an opportunity to move forward. I'm excited.
Absolutely, feet forward. Yeah, that's where we are. So what else? I mean, there's so many different things that I have, took notes about. I'm just trying. One of the things that I loved is what you said, that like a typical day is never boring.
It is never ever boring. But I think I shared with you, go home, and my husband will say, how was your day? And my response is, it's never boring.
Never boring, because when you're dealing with kids, kindergarten through 4th grade, it's just, you never know what they're going to say.
Exactly. You come in with here's my plans for the day. These are some of the things that are scheduled on my calendar.
Right.
And you never know what the day is going to bring you and what it's going to look like.
It's really, I think that's the whole role of all educators, whether they're the classroom teacher or the administrators. Every day is a different day because, you know that the state test is going to be on April 15th or something like that. But other than that, it's just, like when I was talking with Greg Fondy, he said, well, you know, somebody just had an injury, so now I'm having to deal with rescheduling how that kid is going to get their learning because they, I think they broke their hand or something like that. So it's just like, boom, you never know.
Exactly. You never know.
Right.
Similarly, we recently had an injury, and you're like, oh, but it's that whole kid's experience. So it's, you know, what can you do to figure that all out?
Anything else that you want to share with that I forgot to say or that we forgot to say? I mean, I think we're there, right? You're all right. Well, I want to thank you.
Thank you.
You know, as I was thinking about talking with the assistant principals, I was thinking about the dynamic duos. There's Lucy and Ethel. There's Captain Kirk and Spock. There's Holmes and Watson. And our principals and assistant principals are our dynamic duos for our 3 great schools. So I'd like to thank Rachel and Greg and Adam for joining the conversation. They are indispensable for our teachers, for our students, for our families. Thank you for all you do every day. And thank you for joining us. Look for our next edition of Inside Pleasantville Schools, and have a great day.